to the President of the United States, Kellyanne Conway. All right, Kellyanne, am I right, am I wrong, or somewhere in the middle?
Well, you certainly are high energy. That is a compliment in the Trump administration. Janine, I think you hit on something very important. If you look at the Russian obsession, these conclusions in search of evidence, it's as if those machines that develop the chyrons, the lower thirds on other networks, are broken. I mean, they say the same thing show after show, day after day. And what's happening is the mainstream media are making Americans suffer from information underload on all the great things the president is doing to create jobs, to lift the yoke of these trade abuses and cheaters, to start a commission this week on opioid abuse, which is an epidemic. It's quadrupled since 1999. Bad. It's the leading cause of accidental deaths. And I think with Jared Kushner's Office of American Innovation, coupled with this opioid commission led by Governor Christie, real things are going to happen here. This week you had women empowerment, a panel with our female cabinet secretaries, our amazing, very popular, elegant, brilliant First Lady who speaks 5 languages. I speak 1. She went to the State Department and gave a beautiful speech and gave out awards. The president unleashed energy production, clean coal, oil, natural gas. He's unleashing all these, he's creating jobs, he's doing all these things that don't get covered, bilateral meetings and phone calls, and they don't get covered on the altar of what you said, the R word.
And I still don't know what Russia has done. I still don't know. But what I do know, Bill Clinton made a lot of money giving speeches while uranium was sold. 20% of our uranium is owned by Russia, and Hillary and Bill were in the middle of that.
And by the way, those are the facts. We talked an awful lot about that during the campaign, very often during the Trump campaign and transition. Nobody cared. Very few people said, yeah, we know that, but what? Those are actually facts. These are conclusions in search of evidence. And my thing, you know, I know people talk about fake news and biased media, etc. It's not just unfair coverage. That's one thing. And I think Americans are smart enough to see if the president is being treated fairly or unfairly in the coverage. It's everything that doesn't get covered. It's the incomplete coverage, because this president will be judged by metrics that we saw just yesterday. The National Association of Manufacturers came out with their new study, a 20-year high in confidence and optimism among manufacturers. Those are the job creators. The confidence number is 93.3%. 1 year ago, 56.6%. That's not an accounting error. That's not tinkering at the edges. That's a huge jump. That's jumping by 25%. And the head of NAM, Jay Timmons, said that 86% or so of his members thinks the country is headed in the right track. On the right track. Why? And he said to the president and others in attendance, because we know you're investing in infrastructure, you're investing in energy, that made in the USA, energy is under our feet and off our shores. Let's start developing it here. And then he also said, because we know you're going to get tax reform and health care reform done.
What is next, Kellyanne? After health care, you know, and that mess, what is next? Is it infrastructure, or is it going to be the tax bill?
So tax policy started this week, and the president has committed to giving middle-class families tax relief, middle-class Americans tax relief, and lowering the burden, the tax burden on our job creators so that they can retain and attract American workers here. You know, and even the trade yesterday, you say what's next. You look at what happened later in the day yesterday with trade, that the president wants to crack down on cheaters and abusers. But this is a man who, as a candidate, took the issue of trade, Janine, which was at 1% in the polls. It wasn't even included in some polls on what's the most important issue facing the country. He took trade and he coupled it with illegal immigration. And he changed the entire conversation from what's fair to the illegal immigrant to what's fair to the American worker. And he did that with trade also. When he went around this country, he would see the shuttered factories. He would talk to the out-of-work men and women across this country. And that also goes to trade. He just says, look, of course we're going to have trade. We're going to have bilateral agreements, but the America's not always going to get screwed. They're going to be more fair to America, her interests, her allies, and her workers.
This country, Kellyanne, as you do. And I hear from people all the time who say, you know, we don't really care about this Russian thing. When are we getting jobs? When are we getting tax cuts? When is, you know, Obamacare going to be repealed? And what do we say to them?
We say to them, you're absolutely right. This is how his presidency will be judged also. And this is the way it is being judged by many Americans, by the way. It's a big country out there with tens of millions of Americans who want him and his country to succeed. When they open up their 401k statement, when they go to buy or sell their home, when they see that the home builders confidence index is the highest it's been in 12 years. These numbers don't lie. When they see the consumer confidence, people want to spend their money. They feel good about investing again, about spending their money again. That's how he'll be judged. Was housing affordable? Is health care affordable and sustainable? Was my tax burden reduced so that my disposable income was higher? On his education agenda, do I as a parent have more say in where my child goes to school and what is taught there? Or is he and she, or he or she still beholden to our zip code? You know, his Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, talked about that just this week. Linda McMahon, Seema Verna, Elaine Chao, Nikki Haley. This man surrounds himself with these incredibly accomplished, powerful women who are there to make a difference.
Including my first guest tonight,
I'm talking about the cabinet.
Kellyanne, with a lot of energy herself. Kellyanne Conway, thanks so much for being with us. And you still have a lot of energy too, Kellyanne. You travel a lot as well. All right, author and columnist Mark Stein is still on deck tonight. But next, my sanctuary city mayors flouting the law, the president and the police. Sheriff Tom Hodgson is next to respond to a personal attack by one of those mayors against him. And later,
I don't care what color you are, and I have respect for you.
I care what color you are because it's important, because our differences are also a part of this country.
Our old friend Conservative Union Chair Matt Schlapp with a testy exchange on TV while trying to defend the Trump administration is left out to silence the right. Matt's here to talk about it as justice rolls on. Welcome back to Justice. Sanctuary city mayors standing in defiance of the White House when it comes to keeping you safe. Joining me now is a man who knows something about keeping people safe, Bristol County, Massachusetts Sheriff Tom Hodgson. All right, Tom, you've been on the show many times, and I've got to tell you, I was infuriated when I saw this Facebook posting, and I think we may have it here, where this mayor says, Joe Curtatone says, so officials like Hodgson should feel free to keep blowing hot air. By all means, expose yourself as a sort of jackbooted thug who wants to jail your political opponents for made-up offenses. What do you have to say to that, Sheriff?
Well, that's the kind of thing that you would expect out of someone that wants to divert attention away from the fact that he's actually trying to harbor and conceal people within his own community in violation of federal law. And I have to tell you, I've never owned a pair of jack boots, and I think he referred to me as a jack-booted thug. Look, those the kind of rhetoric that you'll see from people who really are not in concert with what the American people want. We want to be safe. They want the laws enforced in our nation, and he's violating.
Look. To me, this man is despicable. He is a despicable human being. He took an oath of office to protect the citizens. And what he's doing is he's opening up the door to aliens who are criminals and not letting their fellow brothers and sisters in law enforcement know when these aliens are being released and need to be deported. So that's what I think of him. What do we do to someone like him?
Well, look, any elected official that is found to be harboring or concealing anyone through their sanctuary policies the federal government needs to issue arrest warrants on them, just like the federal government would on any of their constituents who did the same thing. We can't have elected officials like Mayor Curtatone and others deciding whether or not they're going to follow federal law depending on how much of it they like or don't. We're a country of laws. They took an oath to uphold them. I took an oath to enforce them. And this mayor is not somebody that should be forgiven of the consequences that the rest of us would have if we had violated the federal law.
You know, Sheriff, look, I know what you do for a living. You know what I do for a living. I did this for 30 years. I cannot believe that we are living in America where the mayors are actually out there saying, we don't want you to listen to the federal government or to anyone in law enforcement, and we want to protect people who are criminals. And I'm not talking about the person who's cleaning someone's house. I could care less. We have MS-13, the worst of the worst, the people who kill as a part of their initiation, and mayors who are stupid enough to say they need to be defended and not American citizens. I think it's time to do something about getting these mayors out of office.
Well, Judge, you know, look, I think most of the American people get it, and they recognize that they don't expect their elected officials to be, you know, creating these sanctuary cities that are going to protect the lawbreakers, the illegals who are here, who are potentially at some point or another going to hurt them if they aren't already having criminal records when they come in. at the expense of the people that they were elected to represent and protect. The fundamental responsibility of government is to make sure that the people in our communities, both the citizens and legal residents, are safe. I don't know how, as you said, any elected official can feel comfortable saying, I'm not going to abide by the federal law. And what example is that to our children? What example is that to the people in the community? If you're a leader and you're saying we're not going to abide by law?
And you know what, Sheriff? My next guests are two people who I wish could confront this mayor and give him an idea of what pain is like when people believe what he believes. Sheriff Hodgson, thanks so much for being with us. So many girls look forward to their sweet 16, a coming of age, a birthday. That's a special time for every teenager and her parents. But Nisa Mickens' life was violently cut short the day before that 16th birthday, thanks to a gang of illegal immigrants in New York, MS-13 gang members that I've been talking to you about. Joining me now is Nisa's still grieving parents, who I thank for being here, Robert Mickens and Elizabeth Alvarado. There's nothing that I can say. I thank you for being here. America weeps with you. And please know, not for 1 minute does America think that what the mayor and people like him think is the right way to think. But tell us about Nisa. Tell us what happened to her.
Nisa was violently attacked by gangs. September 13th, the eve before her Sweet 16. She was walking with one of her friends back to their friend's house, and they had spotted them and said, you know what, let's go ahead and get them.
Okay, my understanding is that Nisa was friends with a young girl from Long Island named Kayla. They've been friends since the 3rd grade.
Yes.
And Kayla had kind of a little back and forth with one of those MS-13 gang bangers on social media. Nothing serious. But your daughter Nisa, because she was friends with Kayla.
They were best friends.
They were best friends. And Nisa got caught up in it.
Yeah.
Because she was walking with Kayla, and there was they don't call it a hit, a green light? Is that what they call it?
Whatever term that they use nowadays, who knows if it's green light, red light.
How did you find it? Did you know there was even an issue? Did you?
We didn't know there was an issue.
We found out afterwards.
Yeah.
After we finally read the indictment, that's when we found out. We were like, wow. You know, it's sad that 2 young girls' lives had to be taken. You know, they're precious young girls, regardless if it was something dealing with social media. If you can't take what people say, then maybe you should not be on social media.
How do you feel about the fact that there are now 4 illegals